got a question for you. My random questions that probably more than likely will end up on our Patreon, but maybe not.
Okay.
So I'm not asking you what the worst pickup line you ever got was, but what is the worst thing some man said to you to try and pick you up?
Oh God, I've had so many that were terrible.
Me too. I had a guy once tell me, asked me where I was from, and at the time I was living in Portland, Oregon, and he said, "Oh, all the girls in Oregon are ugly." And his friend who was sitting next to him just went, "Oh," like, are you that fucking stupid? Anyways.
Yeah, a lot of them are. Two come to mind. One, I was on the subway here on the A train. I still remember what train I was on. I was on the A train, and this guy came up to me and was like, "I like him tall." He's like, "You're like a tree. I can climb you."
Oh my God.
Like,
well, you could, but I will beat the shit out of you. Thank you, though. Yeah.
I was just like, what? So that was one. And the second one, I was in Phoenix and I was visiting though. I lived here in New York, but I was at a bar with a friend of mine. And this guy walked up to me and asked me how I liked my eggs in the morning. And I was like, "Excuse me?" And he's like, "I'd like to fertilize your eggs." Or it was something like that. I can't remember verbatim, but I'm like, that is so no.
Yeah.
But I was like, just get the fuck out of here. Like, so those are the two that come to mind.
Oh my God. So I don't even know how to take this, but I used to go to Champagne's every Wednesday and meet my friend Rebecca, who worked there, for dinner, but she stopped working there. I'm going to say, but right before the pandemic, then the pandemic hit, so we didn't go. Anyways, started occasionally going to Champagne's again and ran into a guy who was a regular that I saw every week, him and his girlfriend, when I used to go prior. And he didn't have his girlfriend with him. And he's like, "Oh, hey, come on over here. Let's talk." And I'm just like, "I'm leaving." He's like, "No, sit down and talk to me." So I did sit down for a minute and we're chatting. And then all of a sudden he turns to me and he says, "I like older women because they're so desperate, they'll do anything you ask." And I was just like, "You're a fucking idiot." And I got up and left. I'm like, "I'm sorry. No, you must have older women confused with yourself," because I'm just like, well, how is that supposed to work on me? Like, was that supposed to work? Maybe what he really wanted me to do was not sit down and talk to him, even though he insisted. I was just like, you're a dumb fuck. That literally was you're just the dumbest dumb fuck ever.
They are everywhere. They are everywhere.
Oh my God, they are everywhere. And
so speaking of dumb fucks, so this last week, this is my topic, by the way. I'm just kind of going to bulldoze a little bit.
Do it.
So I decided that I should probably at least try to start dating again as much as so a friend of mine was like, "Listen, you should go on this app called Field. Have you heard of this?"
No.
Okay, it is the most overwhelming thing I've ever experienced. Like, I'm logging in right now and I literally it says 1,143 humans like you. I did not even write anything. Like, I didn't write anything. I just put a couple pictures up. But the reason I think, because on other, it's just different because it's basically Tinder on steroids.
Okay.
So people will say like, "I'm heteroflexible," or people who are in open relationships. Like, a lot of people are on who are coupled and they're looking for a woman to join them. Or there are,
I don't call that a dating app. That's a sex app. And to me,
yeah,
there's a big difference.
that's fair. That is a really good point. But I was like, what the hell is this? But it literally, like, I've logged in twice. I've never talked to anyone. I'm like, I can't, like, it's just the
Yeah.
date. It's just, I mean, yes, you're right. And some people are like, I want to date, I want to get to know someone. I think there's because there's so many people on it. But I'm just like, it's so, uh,
As much as it pains me to say this, and I don't know why it pains me, so I don't have a good reason, but I'm thinking possibly for an actual date, like you want to go out and have a good time and just have a cocktail and then decide if you want to get laid. That's probably a great app for that. Even the people that say they want to be in a relationship, in particular if they're a man, and I love men, so I'm not intentionally slamming them by lumping them into one category. However, men think with their dicks. So they may think they want to be in a relationship, but if some hot chick shows up and says, "Hey, you want to fuck?" They're not going to be like, "No, thank you. I'm looking for a long-term relationship." And
no, of course. And I
right,
wouldn't do them.
right. I again, not slamming them for it. It's just it is what it is. So
The problem is they also do that when they are in relationships.
yeah, that's another
A lot of them do.
another problem for sure. But the more traditional route, not that I love eHarmony, is that it? Yeah, eHarmony or Match. Um, I just think that if you're paying a fee to meet a woman that you want to spend the rest of your life with, you're going to be a little more committed to it, right? Than hopping on an app and swiping left or right. And I got
True.
that idea from the guy that created Hinge because remember he was on that How I Built This
How I built
podcast.
it. Mm-hmm.
It was fascinating. He was looking for love. He did not find it through an app, by the way. He found it from his college girlfriend. However, I'm just, I just think through no fault of all people on the app, because again, like that guy lumps me into all older women are desperate and will do anything. I'm not going to say all people that get on apps are shallow and superficial and just want to fuck. I don't believe that. But I do think that if that's all you're going to end up finding there through no fault of your own, it's just that's what keeps popping up on your radar, then that's how you're going to end up spending a good portion of your time.
Yeah, true. 100%.
So now, gosh, dating, that's a whole other beast that I'm not an expert in, right? Like I'm not interested in it really.
I went
So,
out on 2 dates this last week, but it was with the guy who I dated before,
oh,
and he was in town. And at first I was like, ah, maybe I won't see him, but we did. We hung out. It was fun.
so why did you stop dating him?
We had very different opinions of a relationship. So I still remember I met him. What city was it in? It was not Nashville. What's the other big city? Memphis. He and I met in Memphis. Um, we were at dinner, and I remember him being like, he didn't say girlfriend. What did he say? He said, I want you to be my primary. And I was like, well, like, what does that mean?
Yeah, as opposed to your secondary?
Yeah, exactly. And he said, a primary basically is like, I think he did say girlfriend at that point. He's like, I want you to, like, you would be my girlfriend, but he's like, I never want to be in a committed relationship again. Like, I'm only going to be in open relationships because he's like, the last relationship I was in was open. And he's like, I loved it.
And then why is he not in it anymore then?
I don't remember. He told me the story. I don't remember exactly why.
I mean, was it his decision to get out of it, or did she get out of it?
He did.
Okay.
He'd gotten out of it.
He loved it, but he got out of it.
He loved the open part of the relationship,
Oh, okay. Of course he
but
did. Who
of
doesn't?
course, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Does that mean you can have an open relationship too, or is he going to freak out if you start hanging out with other men?
so I was like, okay, I've never been in an open relationship. Help me understand. Like, I'm assuming, and just from my limited understanding, there's got to be a lot of ground rules and understanding. And yeah, like, does that mean I get to sleep with other people too, men, women, whoever? Or like, because I know I've known two couples that had open relationships, but the woman could only have sex with other women.
I can't. Now you're sending me to a place we do not want to go.
I know. And that's the thing is it's like, but everyone's different, right? Like for some people, I feel like grown adults can make the decisions they want. If they are
Agreed.
both happy and comfortable, I don't care. So I was like, okay, so help me understand. And he basically was like, yeah, like if you have sex with other men, I'm totally good with it. He's like, but I want to know every detail, like every detail.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. And I was like, why? And he's like, I would just find it really hot. But he's
Uh,
like, no, and I think I can't remember the exact number, but I think he said like you can only have sex, and me too. It wasn't just him. He's like, but the rule should be like you can only have sex with the person 2 or 3 times or something, like because otherwise
you
there's
grow an attachment, right?
right.
Which is when we had our open relationship conversation, that was one of the things that we talked about is inevitably someone might get attached. And then,
Right, of
and that's,
course.
you know, I,
It opens Pandora's box for sure. I think the tricky part is, especially now with all these apps and there's so much access, even when you tell people or you think you're in a committed relationship, a lot of the time you're not.
yeah,
They just lie about it. Like,
yeah.
oh, I had a billing error or whatever. It's like,
Billionaire. Yeah. Babucha. You know, okay, I'm probably going to cut this out and put it on our Patreon. Check out our Patreon for this outtake at patreon.com/shower talks. All right, just so I can clarify where I'm coming from. So I I fully accept that dating will never be the same as it was prior to the internet, which is when you and I both started dating, really, right? I mean, AOL existed. that's that's true, but it wasn't back when I first started using the internet. This is how crazy this is. It was prior to Google, and you have to go get there used to be a URL yellow pages. So you could go to a computer store and buy a book that was full of web addresses for businesses and things, but you had to look it up in the book and then actually type it in a little before your time, maybe. But I used to buy those web address books like yellow pages for the internet. That's how old I am, Freedom, right there. That ought to explain a whole lot. But um, I I realize it's never going to be like that again, where we actually have to take time to have a conversation and get to know someone.
I actually don't know that I don't agree with that because I still think I think the app or the website, but typically app nowadays is just the catalyst of meeting people. Like it's just the vehicle. But at the end of the day, you're still going to have to talk to them or not talk to them, depending on what the relationship is. But like, there's still.
Yeah, but the amount of hookups that happen through that app, and I know because that's how I hooked up, and I'm not complaining about it. That's what I wanted. So, but it's so much easier. It's the path of least resistance. Um, people's inhibitions are a little lower, right? So you're like, oh yeah, I'll fuck him. I mean, I'll never have to see him again. maybe he's got a big dick. So, you know, or vice versa is, the guy's like, oh, I'm gonna another notch in my belt or whatever it might be. It's just easier. Like that barrier is much easier
Mhm.
because you walk into it, right flip, right flip, right flip, or left flip. I actually don't know which way is which, but I'm just going to say right flip, right flip. Or I guess I'm going left. I don't know, whatever. Anyways, and then you're like, yeah, they're hot. I'll do it. And then that person sees you and they go, yeah, they're hot. Let's do it. And then literally you're meeting for a cocktail and then you're going to have sex. There's not a lot of,
No,
so
that's so true.
tell me about this, or how do you feel about that? Or,
Yeah.
which is why I like the idea of friendships, right? I like those ideas. It's what's really interesting, fascinating to me is there is a couple of people that I went to high school with, random cross section of people that like met up at I guess it was our 30th high school reunion. So,
Mhm.
or whatever. And like, wow, I mean, like my 40th is coming up. That's again how old I am. That, they've lived life for 30 years, done a lot of different things, met up at the reunion, fell in love, and got married. But they knew each other back when, right? They knew him for a long time, and through the advent of Facebook, they're able to track these people just in general about, oh, look, they're doing fun things, or this guy
Mhm.
posts a lot of Bible verses. So I know he's a believer, and just you can get to know people and you have a basis. And then you run
Yeah.
into each other at the reunion, and they all seem happy, which is awesome. Good for them.
Yeah. A really good friend of mine's parents, his stepdad and his mom, they had gone to high school together and rekindled at their 20th high school reunion. They had both just gotten divorced, both had two kids,
Hmm. Yeah,
and they're still together. And they've been
yeah.
together for like they're both in their 70s, maybe even early 80s now.
Oh, wow. But I mean, that's to me, that's something to be said for knowing the person. You know what I mean? And I have friends that met on Match.com that are married that like each other. So I'm not saying it's not impossible, but again, it's Match. I don't know anybody that's met through Tinder and gotten married and stay together. That doesn't mean that hasn't happened. It just means it hasn't been a topic of conversation.
What's so wild to me is I actually think more people, I mean, one, it's just the technology and it's available. And to your point, the barrier to entrance, yeah, is
Yeah.
lower. But I think the other variable, there was an article in the New York Times a couple of years ago at this point. It was like the title was "Is the Office Romance Dead?"
Hmm.
And it was all about how with like the Me Too movement and sexual harassment that people are afraid like to ask someone on a date or tell them that they look pretty or like flirt with them at all, even to gauge interest, because if it's not reciprocated or it's taken the wrong way or out of context, that they're opening themselves and their company up to a lawsuit
Right.
or fired. So I think that's one thing, another reason. If you don't have that avenue, then another avenue is going to open up. And I feel like so many people, I mean, we know one couple that we know together who met working together,
Hmm.
right? Like that's a way a lot of people used to meet.
And are madly in love with each other, as far
Yeah,
as I know, right? I mean, they
yeah.
actually like each other, they hang out together, yeah.
And I feel like now you have the additional layer of so many people working from home.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's so actually you and I had this sort of part of this conversation barely in a previous conversation, but I mean, like, I mean, I guess the idea of a relationship is not as clear as it used to be either. Because you and I had this conversation with your relationship, which is, You know, when we see each other, we're in a relationship, but we'll see each other once every 2 months, right? And so then that's when I said, well, what is the point of a relationship? Like, what is it that we are trying to define here? Like, is it as a group of people we are afraid of being alone? And then when you say alone, I mean, because I'm alone, I live alone, but I'm not lonely, right? I I well, other than the cats, I have friends, I go do things, I have a full life, I have family, I have you. So I guess I'm not as clear as I used to be on the concept of a relationship. Because I can have sex outside of a relationship, no problem. That's easy. So that's not the problem. That's not the issue. Do I have people that care about me? I think so. I believe I do. So that's
Uh,
not the yeah. So that's not the problem or the issue. I mean, I'm like, could it be that the concept of relationship also is just not the same as it used to be?
I mean, I feel like everyone's different. I think what's great about relationships now is there are I think people are more open to creating something that works for them. Right? Before it was just very structured in terms of, well, especially for white people, it was like the woman stayed home, the husband worked and was the provider, and she took care of the house and the kids. Like there were very distinct not rules, but roles that people played.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as women have entered the workforce and you have a lot more women who are breadwinners, and it's not as cliche for men to stay home, to be the father, to be the stay-at-home dad. Like in the 70s and 80s that wouldn't have happened, or very
No.
rarely, like sure once in a while. But now it's got, if a man's staying home, nobody thinks twice about it.
Right. True. But you know what, like for me, and I guess a lot of it is I don't have to think twice. I notice that I have friends that if I meet them for dinner, they will not go into the restaurant until I get there. Right.
Mm.
Like, and I don't know if that's heavily woman oriented or not. And again, I'm not as in touch as I used to be with women, I guess. So for me, if I mean, I'll go into a restaurant by myself and actually eat an entire meal alone, not give it a second thought, right? Went to the movies by myself the other day.
Oh, what'd you see?
Barbie.
You didn't like it?
I didn't hate it, but I did not like it. We'll talk about that next.
Okay.
Have you seen it?
Yes.
All right, then we'll totally discuss it then.
Okay.
Okay. So I just I'm like I struggle with now. I'm not opposed to having someone in my life. I don't think I'm opposed to it. Let me rephrase that. I don't think I'm opposed to it. Like I don't feel like it's like absolutely not. I refuse. What I don't want to do is compromise,
Yeah.
like I've done on numerous occasions in the past. It's not worth it to me to compromise because I'm doing what I want. I'm about to launch my life remotely. You know what I mean? I'm like I'm headed in a certain direction. I don't know that it requires having someone else with me.
No, and most people suck. Like a friend of mine was on a date. I'm not even joking. I was like, please do not see this man again. He was so horrific. I'm not even going to bore you with the details. But one thing she told me, and I was like, please tell me you're kidding. That it was just disgusting. So I had called her or texted. I had texted her, and they were in the car together. Were they in the car? I don't know. They were together, and she handed him her phone and said, "Can you read me the message?" Maybe she was driving, something. And he responded as though he was her to me. And I even thought like that sound like it just sounded weird, but I was like busy, whatever. And later she called and had me on speaker. So I talked to both of them at the same time. So I guess later he was like, oh, what does freedom look like? Like he wanted to put a face to the name or a face to the person or voice or whatever. And so she showed him my picture and he literally apparently said like, you know, I've always had a thing for women that have gaps in their teeth.
Oh my God.
And I was like, what a fucking pig. I'm like, do not see him again.
No.
Like, please do not see him again. Like, who says that?
But you know, again, I struggle because I don't want to lump every single living, breathing human being into the same category, right? Like it's hard, but it's hard not to sometimes because you're just like, yeah, men. Eh.
And I'm sure they would say the same, right? Like
They
I'm
do say the
sure
same.
that men think all women are crazy.
Crazy. Yeah. And they all do say that. And that's why I'm like, you might be right. Like we're all crazy and you're all assholes, but some of us have our moments. So, and those moments can last quite some time, right? So I'm like, well, you know what? I'm like, you men make us women crazy. I mean, it's just and then they'll say us crazy women make men assholes. And I'm like, well, great. Here we are in this really crazy cycle and it'd be nice to break out.